quite a few times where we thought we really nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then to sit there and you know, someone go, yeah, it's pretty good. It's, you know, and we were like, are you kidding me? This is Stairway to Heaven.
Right,
We're
right.
like, no, it's not. And you're like, damn it, man.
Hey, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it, Adam.
Of course. I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you, your journey in music, and obviously we'll talk about the new Skid Row record. I just watched the video, and it's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Cool, man. Well, yeah, again, thank you so much. I'm super blessed to be speaking with you, man. This is insane.
Wow, where are you based out of?
I'm in Nashville.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, what about you?
I'm in Long Island.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm originally from California, from San Diego. I moved here a little over a year ago. My family and I relocated to Tennessee.
What brought you to Nashville?
Just the music scene and the podcast, really. I worked on the radio for a long time in California, and when the pandemic hit, it was just, you know, that kind of went out the window. And this podcast I'd been doing for a little bit, and it kind of overtook what I was doing on the radio, and we're like, let's get out to Music City. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Good for you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a weird turn of events, but it worked out beautifully, and we love it here. So
awesome.
It's been great.
It's a great city.
It's so fun. Well, awesome. So are you born and raised in Long Island? That's where the band started, right? Long Island?
Well, no, New Jersey.
Or New Jersey. Sorry,
yeah.
I'm confused.
No, all good. We were in my bass player Rachel, who I started the band with, is from Toms River. I'm from Sayreville, and we met at a music store in Toms River, and started the band really from there.
Wow.
And then I lived in LA for 11 years, I guess, from 2001 to 2012. And then I met my wife and I moved out here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you've been in Long Island for a bit then, since 2012?
10 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's
it's
cool.
awesome. I love being out here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being from the East Coast, I'm sure it's more like home going back there.
It's great because I still have all my idiot friends that I grew up with, you know, and so we get to see each other a lot more often than when I was in LA.
That's cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in, you said Jersey? What part of Jersey?
Central Jersey, about 20 minutes, well, about a half an hour north of Asbury Park, about 20 minutes southeast of Rutgers University.
Okay.
So it was great because we had, you know, I had direct access to New York City and also Philadelphia. But I mean, I spent a lot of time in New York City growing up. First time I went there on my own, I was 13 years old, and that was to a Kiss concert at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Did you go with some friends?
Oh yeah, I did, of course, and drinking Budweiser nips on the train ride up there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy to think how just because I'm from California, like going all the way up to even San Francisco from San Diego is like 10 hours, right? I mean, that's so many states that you could go through on the East Coast, and to be in Jersey and have access to Philly and New York City, like so many big markets and big territories just like that close by or close enough to you can travel to.
That was I mean, we had a great music scene in New Jersey. There was a great club scene. Mm-hmm. And so that was a great education for me growing up, to be able to not only go see bands like Kiss at Madison Square Garden or the Spectrum in Philadelphia, but also see bands in the clubs like Twisted Sister and TT Quick and Prophet. Like, these are bands that I was underage going to see, and that was an incredible education from a performance standpoint and from a just an overall learning standpoint of how to these guitar players that were in these bands were I idolized them, and so I was able to go see them once a week. you know, and they had such a profound influence on me, all of them. And so I was very, very lucky. And there was a lot of people, so many different types of music too. You had everything from like Bon Jovi to the Misfits,
Right.
and, you know, and Nuclear Assault, and everything in between. And so it was just it was a great breeding ground, I think, for all types of music and musicians. So I was really fortunate.
That's amazing to think, like, you've seen those bands in these like clubs, and now, you know, like, especially like somebody like the Misfits, it's like they've reunited again and they're headlining these gigantic festivals and they're playing these huge, like, you know, the Forum or whatever in LA. And it's like, to see the band like that at like kind of the ground level, or Twisted Sister, like that's just such a rad thing to,
Yeah, I
that
mean,
you had a chance to experience.
Misfits would play these little punk clubs, you know. I mean, they were from Lodi, New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, and they would play like City Gardens down in Trenton, and they were just, you know, these little punk clubs, and but you know what? I give those guys so much credit because they worked their asses off. They never stopped working their asses off. You know, Doyle and Jerry Only are just, they're great. The number one, they're great musicians, but they're great marketers and promo people as well. Obviously,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they created a culture all their own, and so I give my hats off to them. And they, you know, they still work their asses off, and so they deserve all the success that they have.
Well, you've worked your ass off too. I mean, to think the longevity and the success of Skid Row, and to have even a new record coming out this year, like that's so insane.
Well, Rachel and I have been together for 37 years. And we met each other in 1985 and became friends really, really quick. And it was it was interesting because, you know, the music store that I worked in where I met him was about an hour and 20 minutes from where I lived. And the only reason why I worked down there is because I couldn't get a job in my own town. Like no music store would hire me. I wouldn't cut my hair for a regular job. So by happenstance, I met the manager of this music store called Garden State Music, and we hit it off. And I talked my way into a job, and I was working the front counter, and I used to see Rachel come in all the time, and he just looked like a rock star. And I was like, I got to meet this guy. I got to find out about him. And so we became quick friends, and I dropped every name in the book. Like, I know this person at this record label. I know this person, and 75% of it was true. And I was just building myself up, and one thing led to another, and we decided to start writing songs together, or we decided to try to write a song together, to attempt to do something. And it came out. It was a really great experience for both of us. And I think quickly, early on, we figured out that we each might have had qualities that the other person didn't have from a songwriting perspective. And I might be lacking in an area that he excelled in. So we complemented each other really, really well. And I think that we were quick to figure that out. And when we figured that out, that's when we started going, we need to build a band around this. I had a band in New Brunswick, New Jersey. He had a band down in Toms River. He started coming up and jamming with the guys that I had, and then we just started cleaning house.
Oh, okay.
And started really getting serious and getting people that who were as ambitious and as serious about this as we were.
And that's got to be the hardest thing. I've talked to other bands and heard stories from other bands where it's like, you know, like you just said, Rachel's in a band, you're in a band, and then it kind of morphs into the band that ends up working out, because it's hard to get 4 or 5 people that all have the same ambition and drive to do this and are willing to just, this is it. I'm going to give up everything and I'm going to focus on just being a band and making this work.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I I was taught so many great lessons at an early age. I mean, I grew up down the street from John Bon Jovi, and we've been friends.
Oh,
We've been, I know, right? Like 3 streets away from each other. So we've known each other
crazy.
since I was like 11 years old. And we've been best friends since we were, you know, that age. And so I was able to watch firsthand his rise to success. And so I had a mentor and a teacher, an educator right up the street from me who was teaching me about the ins and outs of songwriting and putting a band together, and you know, dealing with promoters and you know, club owners, and you know, and then you know, dealing with people in on an arena level. So I had a great, I was really lucky that I had those resources around me. And it helped me out so much, and thus helped us out with the band. Like, 'cause one of the things that he taught me, and you always surround yourself with people who are better than you, people who excel at stuff that you might not. Don't, hopefully they have the same work ethic, but always surround yourself with people who are more talented than you. And so that's what we did, or that's what we attempted to do. And had some, through the years, have had some really, really talented people in the band. And every one of them has played a role in allowing us to get to where we are now. Being a band for 36 years, and you know, selling however many records we have, and being able to still tour the world, and have people want to see us and hear these songs is truly humbling. I don't know how other people feel in the same situation that we're in. I know I could speak for Scotty, Rachel, myself, that we're still blown away by the fact that we get to go out and play these songs that we created from nothing, in a green paneled bedroom at his parents' house, or you know, a tinfoil covered ceiling in my mom's basement. You know, like just crazy stuff. And you're writing these songs, and you're putting a band together, and somehow these songs have reached people halfway around the world. And so when we go out and we play, I still get chills when I see someone singing back one of our songs to us in the audience. And I just shake my head, and I'm like, who would have thought? Because really, the dream that everybody has is, you know, to be the quote unquote rock star, and live that lifestyle and stuff like that. And we've certainly been afforded that if we chose to take it. But the real dream, like I guess the more realistic one, was to be able to play music for a living. And I can remember when we were recording our first record, you know, we all had these visions of grandeur, which ultimately came true. But it really was about, I hope we could sell enough records so we can make another one. But that meant everything, because that meant that we didn't have to go back and work at the music store, or we didn't have to go do landscaping, or whatever it was that we had done as individuals. And that was really the impetus, man. It was, that was the driving force, as simple as that may sound. And I mean, the other stuff, we wanted to be the best band in town, and then in the state, and then, you know, in the world. We had all those aspirations as well. So we worked really hard at our craft, at writing songs, and listening to people, learning, you know, being good listeners, man. That's really, really important. Being able to listen to the room, to the people around you, be a sponge and gather knowledge. You know, I'd rather be the dumbest guy in the room than the smartest guy, because I'm going to walk out of there with a lot, and I'm going to be able to apply that and implement that. It's somehow in our career. And I think that we learned early on that that was a great road or path to take because we got a lot of knowledge really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And we were fortunate enough to be around people who had a lot of knowledge, you know, not only John, but people like Doc McGee and his brother Scott, and people from eventually from our record label, you know, Dorothy Sisignano and Jason Flom and Doug Morris and obviously Ahmet Ertegun, and the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And we were really, really fortunate to be in the company of these people. So, and I believe that we, for the most part, I believe that we were able to use that to our advantage, to make the band accelerate more than if we had, I know for a fact we accelerated more than if we hadn't had that luxury of all that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, having that, the information and having that luxury, also a lot of people could have access to something similar but not capitalize on it the way you guys did, or have the talent to back up. You know what I mean? Like, there's obviously the songwriting and the skill set that you all brought to the table that all kind of mixed in with the knowledge around you.
I think the most important thing about all that is, like, and I appreciate that. I think the most important thing about all that is that everybody has some level of talent within them.
Mm-hmm.
And we were lucky enough to kind of find that as individuals early on. And then when we got together, like I said earlier, with Rachel, figuring out what one did better than the other and how that would complement and make the overall product a better product, better song, a better band. And but the thing is at the end of the day, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have a work ethic, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And the work ethic is what really, I think that might have set us apart a little bit, because we were all had day jobs, as everybody does, and we had night jobs, which was the band.
Mm-hmm.
If we weren't rehearsing, we were writing. If we weren't writing or rehearsing, we were playing. So it was 24/7. There would be nights where Rachel and I would be up till 6 a.m. working on one verse of a song just to get it right, and then having to go to work at 8. I mean, that happened. Those were pots of coffee at 3:30 in the morning and Spam sandwiches, man, and macaroni and cheese. And that's what we did. And it was great. I mean, it was hard,
Mm-hmm.
but it was great. But we were, you know, driven, and we're still driven. We still have a great work ethic. I mean, it shows. Anybody that looks at our touring schedule over the last 10 years will be able to see, you know, we're doing well over 100 shows every year all around the world.
Yeah, you have a ton of them lined up for the next like 3 months.
Yeah. And we're not going to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, while we kind of look at it like, man, we might as well still do it while we can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the thing. And this is essential, is that you have to love it. You have to love what you're doing and love the people that you're doing it with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can remember very, very early on, Rachel and I made a vow that if it wasn't fun, we were going to walk away from it. And
wow,
we stayed true to that. When it wasn't fun anymore in the late 90s, we walked away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we realized that maybe we didn't enjoy playing with some of the people that were in the band at that time, but we still loved the songs, and we wanted to continue to play those songs and create new songs. So we found, you know, other people to come in, and kind of did that. When it ran its course, and here we are, you know, with a new record on the horizon. It's crazy. New singer, new label, new management, new booking agents. It's like it's new blood, you know. It's very, very exciting. And I always go back to the humility part of it, because it all is very, very humbling. And I still, and we say this on stage nearly every night, is that we still can't believe that we get to make music for a living. Like, it's really, and it's simply because the audience, and without an audience, you know, you can't do this.
Mhm.
And so that is truly humbling, and the amount of gratitude we have towards the people who have supported us throughout you know, 3.5 decades is really, it's really something, man. It's really something. Have given us a life that we only dreamed of as, you know, in our early 20s, and here we are, old man, and you know, we still get to go run around like children.
It is really incredible to think of the longevity of the band, and just, you know, how every album you're still putting out such a high quality product, and the songwriting is
Thank you.
still just as good as the early records. I mean, that
Thank
just
you.
is such a, you know, says so much about you all as songwriters in a band. I just want to rewind here for a half a second, if that's cool. I'm just curious, how did you get into music? Did you come from a musical household? I know you said you saw this Kiss concert at 13, but were you playing guitar prior to
No,
that?
no, I was a jock, man. I had aspirations of being a professional baseball player.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was obsessed,
That's
obsessed.
cool.
I loved it. I still do to this day. And it's pretty amazing that the Yankees and the Mets are both doing so well this year. I'm a Mets fan.
Right.
It's great. It's great to have New York baseball being so at such a high
High
level.
level, yeah. What position did you play? I'm just curious. My
I was a
6-year-old loves
pitcher.
baseball. Oh, you were a pitcher.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Lefty or no?
No, no, I was
Oh,
a
okay.
right-hander, man, but I had a wicked curveball at a young age, man. I was throwing curveballs when I was 12 years old,
Oh
and it
man,
was
that's
wicked. I
brutal.
I, I got to pat myself on the back for that. And so, and I played in high school as well. But I'll tell you what happened was I was lucky enough to grow up in a household that was full of music. I'm the youngest of 5 boys,
Oh
and
wow.
so and my mother loved music as well. So on any given day, you would hear anything from like Elvis Presley or the Beach Boys to Hendrix to Janis Joplin, Humble Pie, 10 Years After, Montrose, Procol Harum, the Beatles, of course, or the
Mhm.
Rolling Stones, of course, Motown, all the great Motown stuff, Temptations, Four Tops, Jackson 5, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, all of this crazy myriad of artists would constantly be playing in my house, Black Sabbath. And so I was getting an education without even knowing it. And these were all having a profound subconscious influence on me.
Mhm.
It taught me melody. It taught me chord progressions without even knowing it. Hearing stuff in my head. And then once I picked up the guitar, which wasn't until I was, you know, 14 and a half years old, that stuff was embedded in me. And
Mhm.
so I naturally gravitated to those things that I had up here and in here, and figured out on guitar how to manipulate that. Um, but no one in my house played. My brother, my next oldest brother, had bought an acoustic guitar from the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
That's awesome.
Classic story, right?
Yeah.
And he played it for about 3 weeks, and he gave up on it. And here was my opportunity to do something better than my brother.
Oh,
And
sure.
and
Yeah, as the
so
youngest, you gotta, yeah, prove yourself, right?
exactly. I mean, I was sick of getting my ass whooped by all my brothers, you
I
know,
bet. Yeah.
and so they laid some beatings on me. So I took this as an opportunity, and I was really enthralled with it from the very beginning, because I just thought that what an amazing thing that you can create these sounds by placing your fingers somewhere and strumming across these strings. And I was like, this is really incredible. And he had bought a guitar course off of the television, off an ad on TV, and it was called the Quick Pick and Fun Strum and Home Guitar Course. And it was a set of 4 records, and you put the record on the turntable, put the needle on, and the first thing you do is they teach you the name of the strings, teach you how to tune, and then start you off from there. And that's how I learned.
Wow,
At
that's
this
wild
time,
to think that just an audio recording, you're able to learn like, okay, this is the string, this is how you tune, like how, like to be able to hear all that just based off of only an audio
that's all you
medium.
had.
Yeah, it's
So you
crazy.
had. You didn't have YouTube, you know,
Right,
you didn't
exactly.
have anything like that.
Right.
And then John Bon Jovi had already been playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him to show me some stuff, and he showed me a bunch of chords and things like that. And then he suggested that I go to his guitar teacher, a gentleman by the name of Al Parinello, who was a mentor to both of us, who lived like diagonally across the street from John. So I was a very, very, very shy kid. And I walked up to Al's house, and he lived there with his wife, Sharon, and their 3 kids. And I would just walk back and forth in front of his house. I was too scared to go up and ask if I get lessons. Finally, his wife, Sharon, came out and was like, man, can I help you? I see you walking back and forth in front of our house. And I was 15 years old. And so I said, you know, can I get lessons? And Al taught me for about a year, and I excelled at it pretty quickly. And he was like, I can't really teach you anymore, and you gotta find this path on your own. And that's when I indulged in every record I could. But the Kiss thing, going
Mm-hmm.
back to that, when I saw Kiss, it changed everything. I knew that what I saw on stage and what that audience that I was a part of was reacting to, the hysteria, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and the bombastic nature of that show, I said, I have to be a part of that somehow. Like, I need to be in the middle of that experience. Like, I need to somehow be a part of music. Had no idea what it was going to be. Like, that didn't come until a year later,
Mm-hmm.
where I figured it out. But I was possessed with figuring it out. And that's when I started like shying away from sports and gravitating towards music, but I just couldn't figure out what it was. And then the opportunity kind of appeared.
Sure. So when you started learning guitar, did you stop playing baseball?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much, yeah. Because I knew what I wanted to do.
Right.
And that's really rare for a kid who's, you know, barely 15 years old.
Right. Yeah. To do
Really,
that. Yeah. That's significant of a change.
My family was disappointed for a little while because they thought I gave up. They thought I, you know, had a shot at doing something with baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really weird because sort of I knew within myself, I knew I had peaked. Like I knew that I peaked at sports, and I knew that I had something else, and it was this music thing.
Sure.
And
Wow.
and then I when you first start playing, every day is a revelation.
Uh-huh.
You experience something that you didn't know existed before, and so your progress is really by leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so exciting because all you want to do is go home and play music. And that's what I did. I locked myself in my room. I had no social life whatsoever, with the exception of going out to clubs and seeing these other great guitar players and great bands, and sort of formulating in my mind what I wanted to be a part of as I grew older.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the educational process never ended. It only accelerated. And that was really exciting. It was very exciting times.
You played with Bon Jovi, right? On
I
the
did.
Yeah, early on.
I play, yeah. And it's really strange because I'm sorry, I have to make a text real quick.
Oh no, if I'm taking up too much of your time, I'm so
Not
sorry.
all. I love talking to you. This is a great conversation.
Oh, thank you. No, I know sometimes people are like, oh shit, I got another interview now. I'm like, oh, whoops.
Yeah. Okay. I just had to send a text out to my son to tell him to go to the weight room.
Oh, no, yeah. If you got to go, let me know, because
No,
I'm
man.
just having so much fun. Awesome.
Yeah, me too. Me too. No, the whole thing with Bon Jovi was I was 18 at the time, and he had won a contest at a radio station in New York. It was 104.3, the Apple, WAPP. And
Okay.
so it was like a local homegrown thing. And they play your music on the radio, and people would call in and vote for their favorite song. And his song ended up winning this contest. Part of the contest obligation is if you won, you had to play a bunch of radio sponsored shows.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he didn't have a band together. It was the song Runaway, which is the one that ended up, the same version ended up being on the debut album.
Wow.
And he had a bunch of studio musicians play that, like Tim Pierce, who was Rick Springfield's guitar player forever, who was a phenomenal player. He played guitar on that and the solo. Like that's
Whoa.
terrible. And he had a bunch of other studio musicians, because at the time he was working at the Power Station recording studio in New York. So he was able to get these guys to play, like
because they're already in like sessions playing.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And so he wins this contest, and he's like, oh, I got to put together a band. And so he goes, would you help me out? I'm like, yeah, of course, man. And he already knew David Bryan from a band he was in with David in high school. And I knew Alec John Such from playing the club scene. Like, he was in another band called Phantom's Opera, and they were awesome band. And so I knew Alec. I got Alec in, and then Alec knew Tico, who played in Frankie and the Knockouts, and then Tico came in. So we had a band really quick, and we were able to go out and do these shows. I think there was 7 or 8 shows that we did, but there was never like this, you're the guitar player of the band and we're going to do, it was never like that. I always knew that I was standing in for somebody else. Like someone else was going to be the guitar player. John's influences and whatnot, we had a couple common things, like Bad Company and AC/DC, but he leaned more towards the Jersey Shore type of sound, which is, the Springsteens and the Asbury of the world, and
quite a different sound than what Skid Row does, obviously.
I was Judas Priest and Van Halen and Ozzy, and that was my whole thing. And so, as luck would have it, Alec was really good friends with Richie Sambora. Richie would play in a cover band in the front lounge of the club that I was the assistant manager of.
Wow.
And I loved Richie. I was a fan. You still am. And I learned Richie was always so kind to me. And then one day Alec introduced Richie to John, and they hit it off. And John basically said, look, I'm going to have Richie join the band. I'm like, awesome. Like, he goes, you're meant to do your own thing, dude. And I'm like, yeah, I got like this, no problem. I understand it. He's your Jimmy Page. He's your Keith Richards,
Sure.
He's your Joe Perry. I get it. And then, obviously they went on to do what they do. And then shortly thereafter, one of the things that he had said, he's like, man, you put together a great band and I'll help you out in any way that I possibly can.
That's awesome.
And they became the biggest band on the planet. And we put together a really good band.
Did he follow up on that? Like, was he putting you guys on their shows and stuff early on?
Oh,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
That's so cool.
And he's the one, I mean, we never would have been with Doc McGee if it wasn't for John.
Okay. Wow.
And they were really instrumental. And they, what I think the most, besides being able to watch that rocket ship take off, and watch the work that they put. Because I would go see them in the studio, like with all their records. I would go spend a week hanging out in the studio with them, and that was, you know, that what an education that is.
Right.
And then I got to, you know, go out and see them when they were on tour. And so I got to see that aspect of it. And it just, you go, I want all of this, you know, I mean, I want it all, but you got to figure out a way to get there. And so I had been given, and Rachel too, when we were Rachel and I would go, you know, out on the road and go see them. And we had a blueprint.
Sure.
Basically,
Yeah. You have somebody to, you're witnessing somebody from your hometown, a friend of yours growing up that has achieved it. And it's like, okay, well, I guess this isn't so far fetched. Like it's something that's obtainable.
there were two things that really, really hit home. That was obviously one of them because it was so close to home. I mean, guys like my big brother. So, but another thing was Twisted Sister, and seeing them in the clubs and seeing them. There was this place called the Fountain Casino. It held like 2,000 people in Aberdeen, New Jersey, and they would sell that place out.
Wow.
As before they were signed, like they were selling out 2,000
seats. Wow.
I mean, they sold out the Paramount Theater in Manhattan, which at the time was, I think, 3,000 people without a record deal. It was insane. So, and we were all like, I mean, we were very invested in that. And they would do half covers, half originals. And their originals were great. Loved them. So when they finally got signed, that coupled with watching John and Bon Jovi do what they did, like we felt really, really empowered in that this is really a possibility. Like this could happen. And there was times where we were, you know, destitute, if you will, emotionally. And we just, you know, is this ever going to happen? Are we ever going to find the right pieces? When are the songs going to be good enough? And that was, we had a great sounding board though. You know, we had John and Richie and Doc that we would play songs for. And a lot of times it would be like, it's good. It's really good, but it's not great. It's got to be great. And I don't know how much that exists anymore. Like we're really lucky to have that.
Yeah, I feel like not very. Now it's just throwing up songs online and hopefully it'll resonate with someone.
Yeah, I mean, and it, I mean, look at Billie Eilish. You know, I mean, but that's obviously they wrote great songs, her and her brother.
Right.
And so for us, it was a learning process. But again, putting in the work and listening to the feedback. Okay, you say it's got to be great. Well, what can make it great? Well, a better chorus.
Oh, okay.
Let's go find a better chorus. And you just keep digging. But that's the thing, man, because there's a lot of good out there, but there's not a lot of great out there. And I'm not saying that what we have or had was great. I'm just saying that
it was.
What I'm saying is that the people that we were able to use as a soundboard, and we could tell by the audience too. We're gaining more and more of a fan base, and we're drawing a lot of people. And our affiliation with Bon Jovi didn't hurt at all either. But the constant good is not good enough rang in our brains every time we sat down to write. We would get to a point and then we would go, can we make this better? And oftentimes the answer was yes. So we learned at an early age, or early in the infancy of the band, that good isn't good enough. And that was where the work came in. that's the 4 o'clock in the morning eating the Spam sandwich, trying to come up with that great line. You know, that's where Park Avenue leads to Skid Row comes from. You know, that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, putting it in and putting it in and putting it in. And then all of a sudden it just goes, the window opens a little bit and this gift comes through. And you're like, oh, it is worth it. You know, and I think that the more that we did it, the more we realized how worth it it really was. Not that we were ever like, oh, this isn't worth it. But I think when you get those moments, when you just hit upon something, again, creating something out of thin air with another individual, and somehow you have this piece of music that you sit there and you go, yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
But you never know how good it is. I mean, you have an indication because, again, we were lucky enough to have those people to give us their honest opinions. And it was so tremendously helpful in shaping us as songwriters that not a lot of people are afforded that luxury like we were in that sense.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you know, it still had to come from us.
Yeah, and it still took all that work. It took the 4 a.m. Spam sandwiches and everything else to make it work. It wasn't, you didn't present it to them and they're like, yeah, it's good, but it isn't great. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, it is. You know, like you have to take that criticism and be able to then use that.
It was frustrating. I can't lie.
Yeah.
It was frustrating at times because there was times where, quite a few times, where we thought we really nailed it. And then they sit there and you know, someone go, yeah, it's pretty good. It's, you know, and we were like, are you kidding me? This is Stairway to Heaven.
Right.
Like, no, it's not. And you're like, damn it, man.
You got to have thick skin. And I mean, to have that and to use that and move forward instead of just being so crushed by it. I mean, at what moment was I real quick, because I love where this is going, but I have one quick question, because you said earlier that you weren't able to get a job at the local record store, so you had to get the one an hour away. Was there a reason behind that, or they just weren't hiring, or?
I don't know why. I don't know.
Okay. There isn't some wild story behind it.
No, there's no wild story.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, though, there wasn't like the mom and pop music stores. Mind you, there was no Guitar Center or anything like that.
Sure.
You had Sam Ash in Manhattan on 48th Street, and you had Manny's on 48th Street, but there was no corporate music stores. You know, they were all mom and pops. They were very small. Okay. And so they just didn't have any room at the inn, if you will. And,
sure. Okay.
And they all paid terrible. I was okay with that, man. I always figured out a way to make some money somehow and legally. And
there you go. Yeah. Okay, I was just curious. I didn't know if there was some sort of, because I didn't know if it was like, yeah, I wasn't able to get hired there for some, for whatever reason. But okay,
no,
that makes a lot more sense.
Maybe I just gave a bad interview. I don't know. But literally, there wasn't most of the stores by where I lived were family owned, and some of the people, like, I wasn't a tech guy. So I couldn't mod amplifiers or anything like that. And when I went to the music store down in Toms River, I couldn't do any of that either. But they were smart enough to know, hey man, this got this cool young long-haired kid. He's might bring in a different clientele. You know, these parents with their kids who want to be in a rock band, they're going to buy strings and picks and guitars. So, and we did great business. And then I got Rachel and Scotty a job there too. And we were,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great. We had a blast.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, back to what you're saying, because I'm really curious to know, getting feedback, you know, bringing these songs, and then it's like, this is good, but it isn't good enough. Like, at what point, like, there must have been some validating moment, like, as the back and forth were happening, that was like, okay, you know, this is a little bit forward, we can do this. Like, what was the first kind of like victory moment or a song or show that you guys got that was like, we're on the right path here? And it was a succession.
Okay. I remember being at the music store, and this is in 87. Yeah, it's in 87. And I remember getting a phone call from John, and he had, you know, like, I guess like 20 of our songs or something like that. And he goes to me, he goes, you know what? For whatever it's worth, I think you're ready to make a record. Like, I think it's all there. We're like, oh, cool. So Rachel and I went over to John's house maybe a day or two later, and Doc was there. And Doc is talking to us. I love the songs, you know, the band's great. This is what we're going to do, and starts laying out this game plan. And Rachel and I are kind of looking at each other like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand this. This sounds really cool, but you know, we're still, you know, working at the music store. And so Doc's laying all this thing out. We're okay, we're gonna showcase, we're gonna do this, we're gonna put you on the road, and blah 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 blah. We're like, I still gotta pay car insurance, you know.
Right.
I barely have enough for macaroni and cheese and tuna fish, you know. And then he takes us out to lunch, and we're continuing this conversation till finally we went to him. Are you managing the band? He's like, oh yeah, no, I'm your manager. And we're like, holy shit.
Yeah,
like,
whoa.
Because I'll tell you a quick funny story. I was 19 years old. John had called me up and said, you have to come meet my manager. We're up the street at my mom's house. And I go, who's your manager? He goes, Doc McGee. I go, oh my God, I know Doc McGee from the back of the first Motley Crue album. Like, I used to read everything on there. I wanted to know the lyrics, I wanted to know the songwriters, the publishing company, the people at the record label. I wanted to know everything, and that was my source of information. I remember it said managed by Doc McGee and Doug Thaler for McGee Entertainment. And I was like, I didn't know who he was, but I knew that he was a manager of Motley Crue. And that, to me, in and of itself, made him a hero to me. So we're in John's parents' backyard. Doc is laying down on a lounge chair. And I found myself having a moment where it was just he and I. So I'm like, I got to lay my rap on this guy. Like, I've got it. And I'm like, dude, you're going to manage me. I'm the best guitar player in the world. I'm going to be in the biggest band in the world. You need to be a part of this. I'm telling you right now. And I went on for 10 minutes, and God bless him. He indulged me for that amount of time. Probably felt like an hour to him, but I laid it on, man. And I couldn't have, I have my own handprints on my back from patting myself on the back so much about what I'm going to do and how he needs to manage it. Now, mind you, I don't have a band at this point. So I'm taking a shot. So he lets me go, finish, and he goes, are you done? And I go, yeah. He goes, that's great. Go get me a beer. And I was like, oh. 3 years later, he was managing the band.
Wow. And he did what? He managed Kiss later in their career, didn't he? Or
He
still does?
Kiss.
Still managing Kiss? Like, that's like how full circle that came for you. I mean, to be 13 and then years later be like, oh, the same guy's gonna manage.
Well, we toured with Kiss on their first farewell tour in 2000. We did 127 shows with them. And so opening up for the band with the original 4 members, that was the same band that changed our lives. Like, Scotty and Rachel had the same similar experience as I did, because we all saw them in that same week. I saw mine at Madison Square Garden. Scotty, I think, was the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, and Rachel saw him at the Spectrum, all in that same week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's so
pretty
wild.
Cool.
Yeah. So once he lays out this plan and he's like, oh yeah, I'm managing you all, then do you record that self-titled
No,
record?
we just kept playing the clubs and building up our following, and then labels were getting interested. And Doc had tremendous reputation, so he knew the head of every label there was. And so we were showcasing for Atlantic. Atlantic came to every show that we did. They were all in from the very beginning. And Geffen was coming to shows as well. There was something weird about the Geffen thing, though. Like, Atlantic appealed to us on a number of different levels. They're a New York-based label. We're from Jersey. Their love of the band was beyond palatable. It showed in everything. They had Ahmet Ertegun, Doug Morris, Tunjaram, Jason Flom, and Dorothy Sisignano took a helicopter from Manhattan to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania to see us play in a roller rink. Like, that was how dedicated they were to signing the band. So Geffen was an LA-based label, and I think that they thought of us more like, okay, so we played a showcase for them at SIR New York, and we played 19 songs. And they said, one thing they said, John Collider said, well, it's certainly the loudest band I've ever heard. And I was like, oh boy. And then the A&R person, Tom Zutat, said, I think you've got 2 songs. We were like, oh boy. One of them didn't even make the record. So
one of the 2 that he liked. Interesting.
So we get a phone call. We're rehearsing in Rachel's parents' garage in Toms River. We get a phone call from Doc. He's like, well, congratulations. You guys are signed. And we're thinking it's got to be Atlantic.
Right.
And he goes, you guys are, new artists for Geffen Records. And we were like, oh. So it was one of those moments where you had built up this thing in your brain of what it was going to be like to get signed. And it was a pretty deflating moment. We all felt it was wrong. We didn't feel good about it at all. We felt that everything that we had worked for was all of a sudden was taking a left turn, was potentially going down the wrong path. So we hung up the phone and we talked as a band, and we all felt the same way. And we got back on the phone with Doc, and we're like, we don't feel good about this. And it almost felt like they were doing Doc a favor because Doc had done so much work with David Geffen. And I remember we were going to play a show. It might have been that night. And Geffen was there. A couple of the reps were there, and they're breaking open champagne. And Atlantic Records, Jason Flom and Dorothy Sisignano showed up from Atlantic Records. Like, they weren't giving up. They were not giving up. They were there. They were watching the champagne, and they were there. And we all were like, yeah, this isn't right. And a matter of fact, one of my good friends worked for Geffen. And even though he was still a friend, it just didn't feel right. And so we told Doc, we can't do this. We can't do this. And he goes, okay, let me figure it out. So he's in LA, and he gets on the phone with Ahmet Ertegun, and Ahmet goes, what's it going to cost? And Doc goes, well, they're signed. I already signed them to David. He goes, no, I'll handle David. What's it going to cost? And Doc gave him a number, and he goes, fine, you got it. And he goes, all right, so what about David Geffen? He goes, don't worry about it. I'll take care of David Geffen. And he did. And we were on Atlantic Records.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And then obviously that first record just goes insane. I mean, to put that album out and then to have them tell you that only one of the song or 2 of the songs are good, you didn't even put the other one on there, and to do what you guys knew was true and was the right decision. Obviously, how big that paid off, obviously.
Yeah, again, we still had the thought process of, we were very simplistic. You have the visions of grandeur, and oftentimes they're delusions, but it really was, please, please, please let us sell enough records to make a second record. And we went out on that Bon Jovi tour, the New Jersey tour, and you could see it every night growing. Like first few shows, no one was really in the arena where we're on because no one knew who we were. We had just released that record, I think that day or the day before the first show. So no one knew who we were. It was going to take a while, if at all. And then we released the video for Youth Gone Wild, and it started gaining a little momentum. The more momentum it gained, the more people were showing up for the shows. The more people showed up for the shows, the more people were talking about our live shows. We always prided ourselves on being a high energy, raucous rock and roll band. It was just that was who we were and are. And so the word started spreading, and more people were showing up, and we're when MTV did the top 15 countdown, and we saw it climbing. It started out at 14 and eventually went to #1, and we were getting played on. It wasn't even like an official single, it was just a release, but it was getting a lot of interest, but it wasn't overnight. It took a little bit, but what really broke everything open was when we did the video for 18 to Life and released that, which was not the record company's choice. They wanted to do I Remember You, and we always felt that I Remember You is kind of the last song that would be the finishing touch of the record.
Right.
Nothing felt comfortable coming after that to us. And so we kind of begged and pleaded. I remember we were in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and on tour, and we were on the phone with the label, and we were like, please, 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 just trust us on this. We want this record to last 16 months, not 9 months, but we need to give it a chance. And so they acquiesced, and it paid
that one,
off.
yeah, that one is obviously one of the massive, obviously.
And we were very fortunate. We had a great team working with us, and a great radio team that was working with us, and the video team that we worked with, Wayne Isham and Kurt Marvis, came up with a great storyboard and filmed just an awesome video. And so we were just really lucky.
I love it, and I love the new video. Speaking of videos and how amazing they are, I mean, this new one's incredible, co-directed by Rachel. And but I want to I have one more quick question on the past albums, and then I really want to talk to you about this new one, because I can't wait to hear all about it. Was after having the success of that first album, obviously that does so well, was it worrisome at all? Or like when you come back with Slave to the Grind, were you guys even thinking about that, like follow-up or anything like that sophomore album? Or was it just like, let's just keep writing?
No, absolutely. But because everyone always talks about the sophomore jinx, and
and
we were aware of that, and we but we had a pretty clear vision of what we wanted to do musically. And so from that aspect of it, it took a little bit to get back in gear. We don't write well on the road. It's just something that doesn't come easily for us. So riffs do, like old sound check riffs and stuff like that. And then you take those riffs and you create around that when you get off the road, which is what we did. And so we had toured with Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, and Aerosmith. And we had been out about 16, 17 months. We came home, probably took like a month off, and then got back into writing. And the first couple of things we wrote were good, but we knew they weren't great. Lessons learned. And then it started to happen, and we started to feel it, and started coming up with some really, really cool stuff, and Monkey Business and Quicksand Jesus and things like that. Slave to the Grind. And it was a really, I guess the word would be prolific time, but there was also there was some division in the camp as well. With success, you know, your character becomes revealed, but it often gets masked by the happiness and the success that you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and when, you know, when people start whispering in individual people's heads and stuff like that, that starts creating a divide. Um, you know, whereas once you were this thing, now all of a sudden you have this idea that you're much more than that. And sometimes that's the case, but a lot of times, you know, we could sit there and be a songwriter, and then all of a sudden we think, well, we're also a manager, and we're also a booking agent. We're all, you know, it's like you start maybe diminishing the roles of other people and what they're good at. So we started. There was some cracks in the veneer, but we still had enough of a shared vision to create that record, and it debuted at #1, which was just incredible. It was, you know, no one ever thought that. And I remember we were getting ready to leave. We were already on tour with Guns N' Roses, and we had a day off in our home in Jersey, and we had the bus parked at a hotel there, and we had gotten the word that morning that the record debuted at #1, and so we drove down to the show in Washington D.C. We were playing at the Cap Center, and it was just like, wow, like, holy crap, like, what just happened? You know, and it was really a phenomenal experience.
That's so great. Like at that point, I'm sure like at what point did the band, you know, were the jobs gone and it's just like music full time? Was that right around the first album being released?
Oh yeah, yeah, it was right.
Yeah.
It was when it kind of like when Doc started laying out that plan.
Yeah.
The plans was it's time to quit your job.
Yeah. I figured as much. And then especially following it up with this, you know, the album sales and everything else. But yeah, I've always heard about that, you know, trying to follow up that first record and then to do so and then debut at #1. I mean, that had to be a great feeling.
It still is. You
Yeah.
know, it still is. I look back on uh our past with a lot of pride
Mhm.
in the music that we were able to create, and the success that brought. Um, and everybody was a part of that.
Mhm.
Everybody deserves credit for that.
Well, let's talk about this new. I mean, you guys haven't put a full like album out in so many years. Like tell me about this record. When did it start? Like, was
It-
the pandemic some sort of
oh,
piece that fell into this whole thing? Or like,
yeah, it
okay.
fell into it for sure. I fell into it. I was incredibly unproductive during the pandemic.
Okay.
It was I might have set new lows for myself, but a lot of people were really prolific during the pandemic. I was not one,
Okay.
but we started writing. I mean, some of these songs, parts of them date back to like 2017, 2008.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we had kind of recorded the record once, and it wasn't what we wanted, and we knew it.
Hmm.
And so at that time when we had come to the realization that this was not the record we wanted to release and that it needed work, Nick Raskulinitz came into the fold, and he became friends with Rachel. And he started talking about wanting to do a Skid Row record. Now, this is the guy who's done Foo Fighters and Hailstorm and Stone Sour and Rush and Alice in Chains. And he said he wants to do a Skid Row record. So initially we're like, he's just being nice. And then he kept bringing it up to Rachel. And so Rachel's like, he's serious, dude. We're like, okay, how can we make this happen? So we talked to the label. We were able to make all the logistics work. And then it was a case of doing the actual record. And he's like, here's what I want to do. I want to make a Skid Row record. I want to reintroduce you guys to Skid Row. And he's like, I've been a fan since day one. I know all your music. You guys have come a long way away from what you first started doing. I want to bring you guys back to that essence of who you were, because I know it's still there, because you're still alive, and the essence of who you were when you first started writing songs, when you first put this band together, that mindset, that mentality, that work, the work that needs to go into that. That's where I want to take you guys. So basically, I want to take all these songs, deconstruct them, and we're going to rebuild them. And we're all like, at first, it sounded intimidating, but pretty quickly, it felt exciting. And so I think one of the smart things that we did was, one, put our complete trust in Nick to be able to execute this. And two, which is not always an easy thing to do, is leave the ego in the parking lot in order to retrace your steps. And again, when you put your trust in somebody, you can't have it be blinded by your own ego. And so what began was just one of the most exhilarating experiences I think we've ever had, where we were all in a room together, amps cranked, old school, and just started going through each song. And he would say, okay, that sounds like Skid Row to me. That doesn't. Why don't you do something there? Kind of like what you did in the post-chorus of Big Guns. And all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And it was
so he knows like the ins and outs of the band too, where he can pinpoint little pieces like that.
Oh, he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of music. And
that's insane.
And he knows our stuff. And that was huge, because once he said that, I think the light bulbs started going off in everybody's heads. And all of a sudden, again, the window opens and these ideas start coming out. And each of us are trying to outdo the other, but in the best possible way, because we all have the same idea in mind, that we just want the best song. The best song. That's it. How do we get there? And once he started guiding us, it was again, extremely exciting to be a part of and to see these things take shape. And when it started taking shape, that's where we felt like, you know what, we might be doing something really cool here, you know, but of course we're cynical. So we don't get too caught up in that. But the further we got along, the more we were doing this, the more we were jamming, the more we were rebuilding everything, the more we wrote, because we wrote more stuff after that. We were inspired. And so we came in with some more stuff.
What year was this? That was this like super recent, or
it was it was the towards the end of the pandemic, really. I don't know.
Oh wow.
End of the pandemic,
right? But like
last year.
like last year, like 2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2020, 2021. Yeah.
Okay.
And then right around, because there's always something. So right around February of this year, we had all the music done for the record and a couple songs done vocally. And then we were hit with the realization that we needed to make a change. And that was pretty sobering and very, very risky and pretty crazy, because we had to finish this record. And we had a residency coming up with the Scorpions.
Oh, wow.
In March. And this is February. So we're like, but the problem is, and there's no animosity with ZP or anything like that. The band and he were separate, and we're going down separate paths. And that divide grew wider and wider. And we hoped that they would converge somehow, and they never did. And so instead of finishing the record and releasing it with that playing such a huge role in what was being put on tape, if you will. We felt we needed to make the change, and we didn't have anybody in mind. We were aware of Eric. We were aware of his Swedish Idol, doing 18 to Life as an audition.
Yeah, I saw that he was on that. That's cool.
Yeah, his band H.E.A.T opened up for us in Europe in 2018, 2000.
Okay.
But we never really hung out. And then we were made aware of him again because he did a revised version of 18 to Life that we saw on YouTube, and was doing Dio songs and Rush songs and Queen songs, and we're going,
yeah, his voice is insane.
Insane, right?
It's so good. Yeah, it reminds me of like Bruce Dickinson / like, I don't know, like he just has that like powerful voice, but it's also, yeah.
So we were like, let's reach out to him, see what happens. Now, again, this is February. We're starting a residency in a month. And we reached out to him, and basically Rachel reached out to him and said, hey, man, just curious. We've written a couple songs and we really like your voice. We'd like to hear what you sound like on it. Would you be interested in singing a couple of songs? No mention of being in the band, no mention of a record or anything like that. Not that it would take a rocket scientist to figure that out, but you know, all things being laid on the table, that's where we started.
Sure.
And he sent back The Gang's All Here, and it floored us. Like, wow. I remember listening to it in the bathroom of the Sky Club at one of the airports I was in. And both Rachel, Nick, and I were all like, this is next level, man. This is for real. Okay. Step 2, let's send them a couple more songs just to make sure we're not full of shit. Send them a couple more songs, and sure enough, they came back better. Then we get on a Zoom call and go small talk for a minute, and Rachel goes, so quick question, how do you feel about being a new singer for Skid Row? He puts his head down and sighs, and both Rachel and I were like, oh, he's gonna say no, he's got too many commitments, blah blah blah, he lives in Stockholm. Excuse me. He lifts his head up and he goes, I'd be honored. And we're like, wow. And then we're talking for a minute, and we go, do you realize that you just became the singer for Skid Row? We've never met. Or I should say we never jammed together.
Sure.
You know? And so we flew him over literally 4 days before the Scorpions show started. We all met on the March 22nd, a Tuesday in Las Vegas. It felt like this guy had been in the band for 30 years. It was really uncanny. He's got the most amazing demeanor about him. He's such a positive guy, very humble, great work ethic, very creative, same sense of humor, same influences. He fit in like a glove. It was like we had all been hanging out forever. It was really strange. It was like nothing like that's ever happened to me or us. And so we rehearsed on Wednesday and Thursday, took Friday off, and played our first show on that Saturday. So we had only been hanging out for 4 days before we started our residency with the Scorpions. And in that time, before he met us, he finished 8 of the 10 songs remotely from Sweden.
I don't know if you could talk about this, or if you want to talk about this, because you had you guys put out 2 EPs that was supposed to be a 3, right? A trio,
yeah,
of music. And then the third one didn't come out, but then when the third one starts, it was like it sounded like you were going to put a full album out then, and then you had the singer thing kind of was up and down. I mean, maybe you can tell me more about that, because I'm curious if any of that made it into this new record.
We had every intention of doing part 3 and having it be all these 3 things tied together. And it sort of evolved into this record. And with all the changes that went on with getting a new singer, a new producer, all these new label, all these newness of everything is surrounding us. We realized that the record that we created wasn't really in the same, didn't have the same sort of fabric that the 2 EPs did. And so it wouldn't be a proper part 3 or resolution to it. Just didn't feel like that. We felt like this kind of like stood on its own.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't, yeah, it didn't kind of fit in the same, like it wasn't cohesive when you got to the third one.
It's kind of the way, I think that's kind of the way we feel about it. I think that maybe at some point we're going to go back and revisit it and be able to sort of close the book on that. But right now, with all the changes that occurred, this felt like the proper path to take.
Sure. So when you guys were writing that, did you use any of those songs or the music that you had written for that to go into this new album? Or is it just like, okay, that it wasn't going the way that we thought, or it's not as cohesive as we thought, let's start into an album? And then obviously the other things were going on with singers, and then you got a new singer, and it's like, okay, it sounds like you sent him some songs first, and then you got kind of his take on it on the way back, and then asked him to be in the band.
What happened was really, we were cruising along, and some of this stuff, looking back on it now, could have been part 3.
Oh, interesting.
Could have. And then once Nick got involved, once we realized that what Nick's vision was, and that we had to make a change, and getting Nick involved happened well before we realized that we needed to make a change with singers.
Okay.
And where he was guiding the ship was back towards where we kind of started from. Like his vision of the band, his vision of making a Skid Row record was reintroducing us to ourselves. So basically going back and finding within ourselves, which always exists, you just got to find it, that essence, that core of why you started playing to begin with. What drove you to start playing? What drove us to form this band and to create this music at the very beginning? What was the driving force in all of that? And so for a guy like me, it brought me back to be like this 16-year-old kid in front of a mirror with a Les Paul slung really low, pretending to be Ace Frehley or Paul Stanley or Eddie Van Halen, Randy Rhoads, whomever. There's a zillion of them, and wanting to be able to express myself in a way that I didn't find until I picked up the guitar, and wanting to be in a band with like-minded individuals and be able to create something out of nothing. And so that, because Nick has, as I said, an encyclopedic knowledge of music and knew all of our history. He's a fan from the beginning, saw us play numerous times. And one of the things that he brought up, which is absolutely fact, is that, you make your first record in 1989, and then every record that you do going forward, you try to do a little bit something different to not be redundant. And then all of a sudden you find yourself 35 years later, you're like, whoa, we're pretty far offshore here. Wow, realize a lot of life has happened in that time.
Right. You evolve obviously as musicians, and you're where you are in your life, and it kind of, I can see what you're saying though, but because you're not 16 anymore
Right.
writing these songs, you know, it's years later, and you've got a lot of different influences at this point, and then so now it sounds like you said, like Nick is kind of getting you back towards that original stuff.
It's that, again, it's that emotion, that particular fire that burns. Like, look, I'm not going to be able to write Youth Gone Wild from the same standpoint because I'm not 21 years old anymore.
Right.
But the feeling that got you to be able to write that, those feelings of how personal this whole thing is to you, how powerful music is in your life, and the willingness to be vulnerable, to express your emotions through your music, ripping all of that other life away, to get to that bare, raw nerve again.
Mhm.
And that was really interesting because it's not easy to retrace your steps.
Mhm.
But once we got into the room and we, you know, he had a really clear vision of taking these songs and ripping them apart and rebuilding them, deconstructing and rebuilding. And the things that got us to that space again was, number one, being in a room jamming with one another, amps all loud and cranked and drums banging and all that sort of thing. And then we'd be playing, and each song, that was his thing. He's going to tell you right now, every song we're gonna deconstruct and rebuild. We're like, okay, great. And again, this is where you leave. You have to be, number one, you have to put your utmost trust in this guy.
Mhm.
And number two, you got to leave your ego at the door. Like, you got to leave it in the parking lot.
Was that hard to do, or you guys just trusted him right away?
Just trusted him right away. Obviously, his track record speaks for itself, but he has a demeanor about him that is just really, really comforting and familiar. And he challenges you in a way that's not demeaning. It's not like someone going, "You're a piece of shit. You're not worth anything. You're
Right, or your song sucks. Let's do something better. Yeah.
right." It's more like, I feel this. I know you got something in you. Show me what you've got. I know that you can do this. I know you've got this. I know it. And you have a guy like that cheerleading you and making you aware of what you're capable of, challenging you on a level of on a level of going beyond maybe where you've gone before, or maybe haven't gone in a long time. And having faith in us as individuals and as a band to be able to rise to whatever challenge he put forth. And that was really, really inspiring, because you almost want, well, not almost, you want to succeed at these challenges he puts before you, because you want to make the guy happy, because he's just such one of those guys. It's really bizarre. And so he would do stuff like, for example, we'd be working on a song and he'd be like, okay, I like that intro part. I like the verse, but that section going into the chorus, why don't you do something like you did in the post-chorus of Monkey Business? And you go, oh, all right.
That's so wild that he could just pick something out like that. Like, just know your discography and know your song so well that he could pull a little gem like that out. Like, oh, exactly. Yeah, the post-chorus of Monkey Business. Use this. Something similar to this.
Yeah, well, that opened up everything. Like, for me personally, it opened up everything. It because then the light bulb goes off. And what happened there was, it did the same thing for everybody. It's like that window opened and everybody's creativity is just coming out into the open. And people are coming up, everyone's coming up with ideas. And boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, you're like, wow, this is really, really exciting. And at the end of the day, it was about, you know what, the best idea wins. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. The best idea wins. And that's the way we did it. And it was so much fun to do it like that because we were kind of cheering each other on and trying to outdo one another, but in the best possible way, because we knew that, like, Scotty comes up with an idea and we're like, man, is there something better than that? Because that's really good. Was there something better than that? And maybe Nick would go, I think we're close. So then you expand upon that. And then everyone just goes, that's it. That's awesome. And then we're there. And we did that with every song.
Wow. Yeah, that must get exciting too. Like once one person goes, oh, that'd be cool. And then it's like, oh yeah, well, what if we did this? And what if we added this? And then it's just like this build, just everyone, all contributing and being so passionate and so excited about this song or this thing that you're making.
It really felt in a lot of ways like we were back in the garage again when we were first together in Rachel's parents' garage. It really, in a lot of ways, because we were in a room by ourselves and with nothing but our instruments and the willingness to create. And so to have everybody creating on such a visceral level was so what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring. It was every day brought new challenges that you welcomed, because the way Nick, like I said, the way that Nick would work with us as individuals, like you would play some, there would be times that he has a special relationship with everybody as individuals. And he and I just hit it off instantly. And I'd play something and I think it was pretty good. And he would just look at me, he's like, really, dude? And I'm like, all right. And you know, things like that. And it just was, it was the first time in a long time that I really looked forward to going into the studio every day, because you never knew what you were going to come out of there with, but you knew it was going to be better than what you walked in with.
That's so cool. That must be such a cool feeling. And
I can't wait to do it again.
And that kind of says something about Nick too, because I'm thinking from his shoes, going in and playing with somebody like yourself, who is just this legend and has this career that's insane and has written all these huge songs, and then him to go and then have you play something and him go, really, dude? Like that takes his own confidence in itself for you not to be like, wait, I guess it's just a relationship you would have to build, but to be able to do that and to be able to make the record better by doing things like that, instead of him just being like, oh yes, Snake, that's incredible. Let's just roll with it. You know what I mean? It almost comes back to the Bon Jovi days when it's, this is good, but let's make it better.
That's exactly what it was. That was familiar territory in that sense. I think that I don't know what his relationship is with the other bands that he works with. I think it would be safe to say it's rather similar, but it just, the trust thing happened instantaneously. Like you meet the guy for a half an hour and immediately you want to get in a room with the guy and create. You know, that's just the way that it is. And you know, he's a fan too. Like he'll be, when we're jamming, he's jumping around and he plays, you know, drums and guitar and bass. So he's well versed in the instruments, and he'll just be walking around and he'll tell Rob, you know, do something, instead of doing that, do a fill like Over the Mountain or something like that. Like, you know, or like, so he offers you reference points where you go, okay. and then, yeah, or double it up, do a double time here, but do the kick drums this way. It's like, holy crap, okay. And then that might not work, but we're all of a sudden now we're on a path somewhere else that leads to something better.
Sure.
And that was the hope, that was the process of it. But then it got kind of scary when we realized, I mean, look, we had all the music done and we had a couple vocal tracks laid down when we realized that we had to make a change. And that was scary.
Yeah, because you had been working on the album. You have a couple songs that the vocals are on there, and it's like this, we need a, and then coming to that person and kind of breaking the news and then finding someone else, like that had to be tough.
Well, it was, I mean, we had gone through the pandemic, and while we were going through it, maybe even before it started, we had started drifting. Our paths, ZP and the band's paths started drifting, and the more that time passed, it felt like the more we were drifting further and further apart. And then we went and we did our first shows back in February while we were working on the record. And it was pretty evident that we were on different paths, and we were hoping that those paths would converge, and they didn't. They only widened. And so we went and played some shows, and this is towards the end of February, and we were like, if we go further, this is not going to be what we want it to be, band-wise, album-wise. So we got to make a change. Now, mind you, we're doing this with the residency with the Scorpions in Las Vegas starting in 1 month.
Yeah, that's what you said. That's so, yeah.
So, like, who does that? Like, you like, you sit there and you go, we need to make a change. It's inevitable. And I'll say this: when we parted ways with ZP, there was no animosity or anything like that. It just was, we both realized that we were just going down 2 different directions, and that we weren't going to be able to meet anywhere in the middle. So there was no arguments. There was no mudslinging or anything like that. It was just different viewpoints, philosophies, and ideas of what we are. And at the end of the day, it goes back to Rachel and I started this band, and it's and Scotty shortly thereafter, and so it is our band, and so we're gonna have to make those tough decisions, and we had to, so we did. And we had no one in mind, and here we are a month out from the Scorpions. We have to get this record finished for the label. That's going to be a whole other thing in itself when we say, hey, guess what?
Oh yeah, we're looking for a new singer.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I'll tell you what happened, and it's really interesting because stuff like this just does not happen. It doesn't happen. I don't know of it happening to anybody else of all the bands I know in this business. We were made aware of Eric a while ago when, like 2009, he had done an audition for Swedish Idol. He had used 18 in Life as his audition thing, and someone had sent us like a YouTube clip or something like that.
Mhm.
And it was cool. We were like, wow, that's really awesome and very humbling.
Right. Especially for a show like, you know, those idol type shows, like to go out
Yeah,
and be like, I'm going to do a Skid Row song. Like,
yeah.
okay.
Just this young kid, you know, we're like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Cut to like 2018, 2019. He was in a band called H.E.A.T, and they opened up some shows for us in Europe.
Mhm.
And again, we never really got a chance to meet him. It was like high and by and passing by in the dressing room or in the hallway. But we heard him singing, and wow, that guy's great. Now, a couple times during the course of our existence, some people that we knew who were in the business, two different people, had come up to us and said, I know you guys are cool and everything like that, but if ever you should be looking, there is this kid in Sweden that is amazing.
Oh, wow.
And we took it like, yeah, whatever. Then we were like, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Then, so we make this, we're making this change.
Mhm.
And Eric had just redone 18 to Life again. And we were made aware of it. And it was great. So we're sitting there talking. We're like, Rachel's like, dude, what do you think about this dude, Eric? And I go, oh, I mean, he's great. He's, you know, he's in Sweden and, you know, all these different excuses I had in my mind. And I just didn't see how it could work logistically, but yet we were making it work for a while with ZP when he was living in the UK.
Mhm.
So we didn't have anybody else in mind. And we initially got in touch with him to see if he would like to fill in for a couple shows. And he wasn't able to do it. He had other obligations. So we're like, all right. So then we go, well, why don't we have him sing on one of the songs? See what happens.
The new
So
song from the new
yeah,
album.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we get in touch with him, and Rachel reaches out to him via Instagram and says, hey, look, we got some songs that we've written, and we really like your voice. We'd like to hear what you sound like on them. Would you be interested in singing on them? He's like, sure. So we sent them a song with a guide vocal, and he sent it back the next day. And my phone blew up from Nick and Rachel. They're like, have you listened to this yet? I'm like, no, I'm in a friggin' airport lounge. They're like, you gotta listen to it. And I'm like, okay. I go into the bathroom and I listen to it, and I listen to it again and again and again. I'm like, holy shit. And I get back, I just wrote back, holy shit. And they're both like, Nick and Rachel, like, yeah, dude, this is next level. This is a game changer. And we're like, okay. All right, we're cynical bastards. Let's send him a couple more songs and see.
Can he do it again?
Exactly right. And two more songs, and he sent them back, and they were just as good, if not better. And so we were like, wow, like this is what we heard these songs sounding like in our heads. Like this
Wow.
is really what we envisioned. So we get on a Zoom call with them, and we said a little small talk, and then Rachel goes, so dude, here's a big thing. How do you feel about being the new singer for Skid Row? And he puts his head down and he like sighs. And we're like, oh God. Like he's gonna be too busy and whatever. And so he lifts his head up and goes, I'd be honored. And we're like, awesome. So now we've got to get ready. We've got to do a record, and we've got to get ready for the Scorpion show.
Yeah, you have this residency coming up.
So I know, dude, it's nuts. So this is like the beginning of March. And we start March 26th with the Scorpions. So we're having him do the vocals for the record remotely with Nick guiding him, and Eric being in Sweden, in Stockholm, in his home studio. And Nick is like, okay, you got to get this mic, this compressor, this mic pre, and we're going to do this.
Oh, wow. So he's
Yeah,
sending him a
dude.
gear list. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, whatever you have doesn't matter. We're doing these, the exact, yeah, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
of course. That, well, it makes sense, I guess. He
Yeah,
knows
but
what he
I mean,
wants
it's
it.
just it's bizarre. You know, doing a record remotely like this, never before. None of this is all of it's uncharted water.
Sure.
And so we fly him in March 22nd. I meet him at JFK. He's got a layover there, and I'm flying out of there with him to Vegas. We meet at the Sky Club, and first thing we did was we hug each other. It's like, wow, like that just felt like the right thing to do. It was bizarre. And then we go right up to the bar and grab a beer and sit down. And next thing you know, we're talking and laughing. And it felt like we had known each other for decades. It was bizarre. I've never had an experience like that before. It felt like somehow I knew this dude, like in a past life or something. I don't know what it was, but we're laughing and same sense of humor, same influences. He's so humble and kind and gracious. I'm like, this is way too good to be true. Like this is not happening. But we had a few hours there, and there was not one moment where it was uncomfortable at all. So I get on the phone with Rachel, and I think Rachel was already in Las Vegas. And I call him up. I'm going, dude, we've got a problem. He's like, what? I'm like, this guy is an asshole. He's
Oh,
like,
man.
he's an asshole. I go, this dude is like so egotistical and so full of himself. I'm going to fight him. And
I'm going to fight him.
He's like, are you serious? He's like, oh no. And then all of a sudden he heard Eric laugh in the background. I go, no, dude, this dude rules. He's awesome. And so we get to Vegas. We all got together. Again, it was the same thing with everybody. Everybody felt like he had been a part of this thing forever. It was the craziest thing. And so that was a Tuesday. We got together and jammed on Wednesday. He knew these songs inside and out. There was no issue with that. All we had to work on was segues and figuring out, so we're not a bunch of bumbling idiots running into each other on stage and sorting that out. But you can only sort that out really through a live show. And so we rehearsed Wednesday. We rehearsed again on Thursday. It was really, really good. And we're like, you know what? Let's take Friday off and go in Saturday and play. And so we did. And so we played that first show, and it was really good. And we played that first show after knowing him for 4 days.
Oh my gosh. And then coming out to the crowd, was that probably more so for him to be like, hey, I'm the new singer.
It was for all of us. It was a rebirth of sorts. It was so exciting because he's just got this air of positivity and excitement within him that is infectious. He really, really does live in the moment. And I'll tell you what kind of character this dude has. We played that night, and of course we get done playing and everybody's excited and we're celebrating, and it really is just an amazing feeling of what we just actually pulled off in the space and time that we had to do it. But later that night, he texts everybody. He's like, can we get together tomorrow morning and go over what I need to do better and how that was,
wow.
we texted out later that night after the show. And so we got into a room the next day and went through it and taking notes and sure thing, everything that we spoke about the next show, he nailed.
That's awesome. Especially especially him leaving his ego aside too. It's like, give me some notes. Like, what do I need to do? It just shows that he also is just as invested as everybody else. He wants it to
Without
work.
a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a
Wow.
doubt. Yeah.
That's cool.
And it's just been, like every once in a while, like I guess a couple weeks ago, he sat and sent the text to everybody. Goes, you realize I've been in the band 6 months? And we're like, that's crazy. Like it feels like you've been here for years. It really does. And he's very grounded and he's aware of his abilities, but he's humbled by that. He doesn't take anything for granted. And like I said, he's got a story of his own, a story of survival that's pretty heavy as well. So I think that plays a lot into his character and who he is as a human being.
Wow, it's just amazing to hear this story of, somebody covering your song and then now he's in the band and he's so cool. He fits in so well. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah, it really is. It's again, I have no idea what we were thinking. We were just running on gut instinct, we really were.
Wow.
Because the other side of it is if it doesn't happen, we're not finishing the record. The label's gonna be pissed off, and we lose the Scorpions gig. So that doesn't bode well for
anyone. Yeah.
So it just somehow it all really worked out.
I love it. Thank you, Snakes. Thank you so much again for taking another day to hang out with me. This has been so much fun. I have just a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious. First off, correct me if I'm wrong. Rachel and yourself are the main songwriters for the band, and you've always been, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that come to lyrics and everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So so when you get new singers, I mean, it's a different sound and a different singer throughout the years, but it's like that's why the sound of Skid Row has always still been there since the beginning. I mean, if it's you two throughout all the years, right? Writing. Yeah,
that's a common thread that runs through everything, and Scotty as well. But there is Rachel and I have the band literally started around us writing songs together. Like we built the band around that. It wasn't like, okay, let's put a band together and then let's start writing songs. We started writing songs together and then built the band around that.
That's what I thought. That's cool. And then with this, I want to know what song you sent Eric first. Like, what was the one that you sent over to him? And we're like, okay, sing this. All here. Oh, it was The Gang's All Here.
Yep.
Okay.
And we kept mostly everything that he sent back. We kept most of it
on the record. Really? Yep. So when you guys all met up again in Vegas and all that, you didn't Nick didn't have him come back and just be like, okay, we're gonna re-record everything.
No, he had by the time we got to Vegas, he had 8 of the 10 songs done already.
Wow. And those are the ones that are on the album.
Yeah. And then we went and finished the last 2 songs in Las Vegas.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And you guys have another huge tour coming up. Are you doing anything here in the States? I mean, you have a few shows, but a lot of it is in the UK, right? And then do you go to Australia, I think?
Yeah, in December. I leave Thursday to go out west, and then we have some shows kind of scattered about. Then we go to the UK and parts of Europe for about 5 weeks, come home, take a bit of a breather, and then go to Australia, and then we'll take off the Christmas and January and February. And stuff, I got to get a surgery in January.
Oh man!
And so it's going to take a little rehab, and then we start up again touring in March.
Wow, cool! Here in the States, then?
Here in the States. We'll probably do a 6-week run in the States and then back over to Europe.
Incredible. That's awesome.
And we'll be through it all next year as well.
So cool. Well, thank you again so much, Snake, again, for doing this 2 days in a row. You are so awesome. I so
It's a
appreciate
pleasure.
you.
It's easy to talk to you, Adam. It's really, you know, it's been a lot of fun for me.
This is so cool. I have one more. My last question is if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah. Always be authentic. Be the best version of yourself that you can be. Like, we are all influenced by so many other people, consciously and subconsciously, and take all of those influences and create you. You know, just be authentic. Influences, I mean, God, we all have them. I mean, that's how we build ourselves, is through how others influence us. I inundated myself with every aspect of guitar playing that I could, from a soloing standpoint, from a chord structure standpoint, but from a songwriting standpoint. That was the big thing, was the songwriting standpoint, and learning Beatles songs and Rolling Stones songs and Kiss songs and Judas Priest songs, and all these things taught me. And then they somehow, they all kind of form together within you, and then you are being birthed through all these different things. But just to be authentic is really, there's only one you. You know, there's only one Eddie Van Halen. You're not going to be him. There's only one Rob Halford. You're not going to be him. So be you. Don't be the next anybody. Just be you.
Bringing it backward.